to SportsCenter from Los Angeles, alongside Stan Verrett. I'm Neil Everett. For the first time since the Manti Teo girlfriend hoax story broke, Teo answers questions about it.
Teo spoke at length to ESPN's Jeremy Schaap Friday in Florida, where Teo is preparing for the NFL draft. And Jeremy joins us now on SportsCenter. Jeremy, what was it like being in the room with Teo?
Well, we spoke for about 2.5 hours, and he was remarkably composed and collected during that entire time. He never wavered. I don't know how many questions I asked him, but he answered every single one of them. He was extremely convincing to my ears. And, you know, this is an extraordinary situation. A young man who has been thrust into the maelstrom, this feeding frenzy for the last 60 hours. And, you know, I was just, I have to say, people will have to judge for themselves when they have a chance to look at everything he had to say. But I thought he explained himself well. He laid out everything that had happened in his relationship with Lene Kukua. And I think there was a lot in there that will surprise people in terms of what he knew and when he knew it. I asked him at one point directly, mentioning the Deadspin story. The story was broken in Deadspin, as most people by now know, 2 days ago. I said there was one line in the Deadspin story. One of the sources said, "I'm 80% certain that Manti was in on this. For the record, once again, were you in any way a part of this?" And the meaning clearly at that point was in any way, shape, or form ever. Or did you perpetuate this in any way, shape, or form? And he said, no, never. I repeated, never. He said, never, not ever.
Jeremy, what was his demeanor like during the interview?
His demeanor during the interview, you know, very calm. There seemed to be no nervousness or anxiety on his part. He was very relieved, he told me at the end of it, to have had a chance to tell his story. He said that he's been avoiding a lot of media coverage for the last 48 hours, which is understandable, but much of it has gotten through to him anyway. And it was clear that he felt better having unburdened himself of this, in the sense that he felt all along people would come to believe him when he had the chance to fully explain himself. And he spent a couple days thinking about it, and he knew this was the right thing to do. Some of the stuff he said, you know, was extraordinary. I know a lot of people have had suspicions about, you know, whether he perpetuated this, you know, with impure motives. But he said, first of all, what you got to understand is when he got a phone call on December 6th from someone who he thought had died on September 12th, he didn't immediately necessarily believe that this was a hoax. Jack Swarbrick, the Notre Dame AD, 2 nights ago in his press conference, said that Manti Teo got this phone call on December 6th. He did not say that at that time he understood this to be a hoax. And so I said to him, you know, I said, well, why wouldn't you think it was a hoax? And he said, well, she gave him some kind of a story that she had to lay low for a few months. And there were all kinds of strange behaviors displayed in this relationship over the course of a couple of years. So it wasn't, it's insane, it's crazy, but he wasn't 100% sure at that time that Lene Kukua hadn't existed. And in fact, he told me that until 48 hours ago, when this story was broken, or just a few hours before it was broken, he wasn't entirely sure. He also told me that the person who has been identified as being the perpetrator of this hoax, Renea Tuiasosopo, apologized to him 2 days ago via Twitter messaging, said that he felt terrible about this, that it had spun out of control. It wasn't his intentions to make him suffer through something like this, although the things he did to him, if we were to believe Manti Teo, are extraordinary, including bringing a 9-year-old girl into this plot. Several people, for months on end, when Manti Te'o says he thought Lene Kekua was in a hospital in Los Angeles, first recovering from a car crash and then being treated for leukemia. He went to bed every night, he said, with the phone next to his head so he could hear her breathing. He was told all kinds of things by people on the phone, he said, about how she was dealing with the hospital. They communicated frequently. I mean, more than frequently, hours and hours, he said, every day on the phone. Maybe I sound too convinced, but I'm just being, I'm just telling you the way that Manti Te'o told me the story. I came away finding it very believable. He also said, clearing up some of the inconsistencies that have been pointed out, such as his father telling members of the media that Manti had met Lene Kekua. He said that he had in fact lied to his father about whether they had met once in Hawaii around New Year's 2012. He was on his way out of the house one day. This person, Lene Kekua, he'd been communicating with online for some time, was supposed to be in Hawaii as well. He went out to what he thought was going to be a meeting with her, told his parents, hey, I'm going to go meet Lene. He showed up, she wasn't there. He gets home. He doesn't want to get into a larger discussion about it with his parents, who he understands might think something is strange in this relationship. And he says, yeah, I just saw Lene. I know this all sounds extraordinary, but this is what he said. And that was how it came to be that his father told people that Manti had met in person Lene Kekua. He also admitted, I think interestingly and importantly here, that after he believed Lene Kekua to be dead on September 12th, when he was interviewed frequently by ESPN, by other media entities, and he was asked to describe their relationship and what it had meant to him, he said when he described her as the love of his life, he meant it 100%, although they had never met. But he did mislead people by saying he met her. And he did so because he knew how crazy it would sound that he felt this deeply about someone he had never met.
I saw that Te'o said he tried to shut himself off from the media over the past few days. But how does he feel about the way he's been portrayed in the media since this story broke?
Well, he wanted to get his story out there because he does know what people have been saying to some extent, and it's hurtful to him. He's extraordinarily close to his family. He's an extremely devout person. One thing he told me that I thought was also of note, he and Lene would speak on the phone every day, or the person who he thought was Lene, for months and months, and they came up with this this ritual every day to discuss scripture. Some quotation from the Bible on a daily basis, a different quotation. And his parents, both his mother and his father, also participated in this daily discussion, a four-way discussion via text message about scripture. And he showed me some of these texts among the four of them. And it was just another, I think, compelling and I think it's fair to say convincing element of what he had to say tonight.
Jeremy, I'm sure viewers want to know, why isn't Te'o on camera during this interview?
That's a good question. And obviously we wanted him to be on camera. That is the preference. But he wanted to do this in a more intimate setting, without the lights, without 20 people in the room. He wanted to have the discussion in this fashion. That's not the most unusual thing in the world, obviously. We would have liked it to have been on camera, but he wanted to do it this way, and I think it probably made him more comfortable ultimately.
There are so many theories that have been floated around, speculated upon by various members of the media. But for those who believe Teo's account of what's happened, the question that seems to pop up is, how could he possibly have been so naive? Did he shed any light on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair question. And, you know, when we have a chance to really lay out everything he said in a more comprehensive fashion, it might make more sense to people. You know, he disputed the theory out there, if you want to call it that he was completely naive about romantic relationships. He's had serious girlfriends. He said he had a girlfriend starting this fall after he thought Linnea Kekua died, if that's an element of it. But he said that he got sucked into this because he felt he was talking to someone who he shared a lot with in terms of background, a Samoan background. She understood the culture, she understood the language, spoke it better than he did, or apparently from some of the texts he showed me. This person, whoever it was, made this emotional connection with him that he said drew him in. And it really was an intense relationship, he said, only over the course of a few months, not several years as has been reported in some places, but over the course of several months from the time she, whoever it was, got out of a coma in mid-May and then up until September 12th, which would be less than 4 months.
So, Jeremy, Teo says Ronea Tuiasosopo apologized to him for this hoax. The Deadspin.com report also implied that Tuiasosopo was behind this. What was Teo's relationship with Tuiasosopo?
Tuiasosopo, he understood to be a cousin of Linnea Kekua's. Over the years, they had very intermittent communications with each other. He was, I should say, another person in this Linnea Kekua circle of friends, relatives, acquaintances that lived online. He met Tuiasosopo for the first time and only time, he said, when Notre Dame was playing at USC. A meeting was arranged. He thought he would be meeting one of the late Linnea Kekua's sisters. Instead, Tuiasosopo showed up, who he thought was a cousin, and he showed up at Manti Te'o's request with a 9 or 10-year-old girl. Manti says a 9-year-old girl, who he had come to understand was Linnea Kekua's cousin, but they had a niece-aunt relationship because of their age difference, and that she had essentially helped rear this young girl who he understood to be Tuiasosopo's daughter and Kekua's cousin/niece. And he had been communicating with this girl. He asked Tuiasosopo and the other relatives if he could meet her when he went out to L.A., and Tuiasosopo brought her to the team hotel, and he talked to her. This was the meeting at which Manti Te'o's uncle apparently got, for lack of a better word, a bad vibe from Tuiasosopo, and determined that Tuiasosopo was lying to him because Tuiasosopo said that he ran Troy Polamalu's football camp, and it so happens that it's actually Manti Te'o's uncle who runs this camp, so he knew that he was being dishonest, but he didn't feel at that moment that it was his place to tell Manti. But he did tell, according to Manti's father, Brian, who then communicated his misgivings about Tuiasosopo to Teo, but only in kind of a general sense.
So, Jeremy, now what's next for Teo?
For Teo, well, he's hoping that this story simmers down, obviously. He's here at the IMG Academy in Bradenton with many of the top prospects for the NFL draft, getting ready for the draft combine. He's hoping this all goes away and that he can get on with his life and get ready for the draft.
Jeremy Schaap, he spoke with Manti in Florida Friday night.